every single World Championships he attends, and I think we have the perfect example here.
That is not an error on your screens. There is indeed Shaman V-Star in Ross Cawthon's deck alongside the brand new Dusknoir from the Shrouded Fable expansion. That excellent Cursed Blast ability has that drawback of knocking itself out, gives your opponent a prize card, but an extremely strong effect to place 13 damage counters onto one of your opponent's Pokemon. I'm very excited to see what Ross has cooked up here. I mean, without a doubt, one of the greatest innovators in the history of the game, most famously getting second place at the World Championships in 2011 with the famous Truth deck. The Truth was not quite able to close that out. You mentioned his second place finish back in 2005. He also had a top 4 finish at the 2016 World Championships with a very unique deck that time as well, Vespiquen with a bunch of dark Pokemon in it. We'll see if this is a deck that can push him to that level once more.
Yeah, and to add to that, he's also had 3 top 16 finishes throughout the course of his story, so we'll see how his story plays out this weekend. As we see the prize cards, nothing too impressive, I would say, from either player. Perhaps the energy switch at the very top for Miloslav could be something that affects him throughout the game, because Regidrago, of course, rely so much on those energy switches to get the right attacker powered up at the right time.
Yeah, for Ross's deck as well, that is almost the same story. You know, Ross is using that Teal Mask Ogerpon very similarly to how the Regidrago players use Teal Mask Ogerpon. Just get energy cards into play, draw extra cards, you can energy switch to make the Teal Mask Ogerpon your attacker, and it does seem like that's actually Ross's kind of main early game attacker. So one of those being up at the top of the prize cards also potentially could be problematic.
Potentially it could be, thanks to the fact that Shaman's Revenge Blast costs only 2 energies instead of 3. That's actually very helpful overall. And then I wanted to touch upon the synergy between the Dusclops and the Dusknoir with Shaman's Revenge Blast, because of course once you use the Curse Blast ability, you place those damage counters, right? And you give your opponent a prize card, and Revenge Blast actually deals more damage depending on how many prizes your opponent has taken. So it's actually, a Dusclops almost becomes a plus 90 damage modifier, and a Dusknoir becomes a plus 17 damage modifier, which could be huge to reach those high HPs that Regidrago V-Star has.
Looking over at Miloslav's list here, there's really nothing super unique. It's a pretty standard Regidrago deck. And looking at what some of the great players in the game brought to this event, it seems like that's a bit of a theme. And now this is an excellent opener here for Miloslav. It looks like he will be going first and has started that Cleffa with that excellent grasping draw attack, immediately benching a Teal Mask Ogerpon, using Teal Dance, attaching an energy card in order to draw 1 card. He's got an Ultra Ball in hand and quite a few Dragon Pokemon that he really would like to get into the discard pile.
Yeah, Ultra Ball, perfect synergy. Get those dragons out early so that Regidrago can start copying those attacks. Very interesting inclusion of the Hisuian Gudra V-Star. We've been talking about what's the standardized Regidrago list. Cleffa, definitely a unique choice. Also missing from Miloslav is Fizantipi TX, which I'm very surprised, actually. It's like one of the best cards, in my opinion, from Shrouded Fable. So it'll be interesting to see why he determined that was not necessary for this tournament.
Well, a support Pokemon he has chosen to include, along with many of the other Regidrago V-Star players, is that Squawkabilly EX, as we do see that being the choice off the Ultra Ball and hitting the bench right away. Its Squawk and Seize ability can only be used on your first turn of the game, but it's very strong. It lets you discard your hand, draw 6 new cards, and when we're playing a game where the current rule set does not allow for a supporter to be played on the very first turn of the game, it's just one of the best options in the format in order to see tons of cards in the early turns.
It is so good, and it can also be a liability, right? So choosing to play it really, the rewards really need to offset the risk that you're getting there. There are some decks, such as Gardevoir, that can really take advantage of those sort of Pokemon, but not this time around.
Miloslav will use that Earthen Vessel, grabbing just 1 single Fire Energy. I think this is pretty smart here. Put it in the discard pile, so off of your Squawk and Seize. On your next turn, when you're looking for a Fire Energy for your Regidrago, you have a couple of ways to get it back, right?
Oh, certainly. This deck thrives on discarding things, right? Because Legacy Star gets energy back, or gets anything back from the discard pile. You have Superior Energy Retrieval as well. You have the advantage of copying attacks from the discard pile, so the discard pile and the interaction with all the other cards is so key for this deck's success.
And I think we may see the discard of that Fire Energy pay off immediately here for Miloslav. He is not attached to energy for turn yet, and he did draw into the brand new Night Stretcher card. Pretty unique recovery option. We see quite a few of these Regidrago decks, some of the Raging Bolt decks utilizing it. You can choose to either bring back a Pokemon from your discard pile and put it into your hand, or an energy card. And sure enough, Fire Energy brought back with the Night Stretcher attached to the Regidrago V, and even an energy switch to move that energy. And I believe Miloslav has a research in hand. Also has a Regidrago V-Star. He is having a very threatening open to this game. And Ross on the other side, we haven't really talked too much about what's going on. Probably one of the weaker starters there, that Iron Leaves EX.
Yes, usually you would love to use the Iron Leaves to take down that Squawk. I think a very key concept we're going to see here is the 2-2-2 prize trade-off. Both players are going to try and take 2 prizes. That Cleffa is really not a liability for Miloslav, because even if Ross knocks it out, then Miloslav simply doesn't bench another single prize Pokemon and he'll be perfectly fine. So I do think Ross has an opportunity here to be extremely aggressive, utilizing Iron Bundle perhaps to force a switch and try to initiate that 2-2 price trade-off. But the HPs are decently high of Miloslav's Pokemon for now.
Yeah, Ross could reach for a knockout this turn technically, but it would be a massive amount of resources in order to pull that off. He does have a full 4 energy switch. We know 1 is prized. So with that Teal Mask Ogerpon, I mean, we most often see it being utilized for its excellent Teal Dance ability, but its attack is extremely strong as well, dealing 30 damage plus 30 more damage for each energy card between both Pokemon.
I think another important thing to consider here is, like, Miloslav made all these decisions without really knowing what Ross Cawthon is playing so far, right? He only sees an Iron Leaves EX in the active, and historically speaking, the only deck that has been playing Iron Leaves as of late is Giratina V-Star, so maybe he's expecting that based on what he's seen, but Ross is gonna surprise him here a little bit with the Teal Mask bench.
Yeah, the Leaves has popped up, I think, a little bit in some of these Regidrago lists as well. You see it from some of the Japanese players. I know there was a pretty big event that happened over in Japan where that was kind of revealed as a popular tech choice. For Ross, it will be the Teal Dance, attaching the energy card, drawing 1 more, churning through the deck here. Can't quite get a good read on his hand here. What do you think he's got over there, Pablo?
Yeah, so he's got Rare Candy, which is not really useful right now. He wants that to evolve into Dusknoir. He's got an Ultra Ball. He's got a Thornton as well, a Pokestop, but not super useful cards to have right now. Those are like late game resources that would come useful then, so it's going to be harsh to have to discard them through the Squawk and Seize that's likely coming up here.
Yeah, definitely not cards you want to see early in the game. Ross is actually only playing 1 copy of Rare Candy, and he's got a really interesting Pokemon lineup here as well. 1 Duskull, 1 Dusclops, and 2 Dusknoir. What's going on there, Pablo?
So I'm pretty sure that has to do with the odds of, like, you don't want to start Duskull, right? And ideally in his game plan, he only ever benches 1 Duskull throughout the whole game, so that his opponent can't take advantage of taking out 2 single price Pokemon. But with 2 Dusknoir, you compensate a little bit for discards. You increase your chance of drawing the card naturally just because you have 2 copies instead of having to Ultra Ball for it. So that's sort of the logic behind that.
You see that Squawkabilly EX hit the bench, attachment for turn to the actives. Iron Leaves and Pokestop in play before the use of Squawk and Seize, discarding the Night Stretcher, drawing 6 new cards now. Saw at least another energy card. Is there an out to another Teal Mask Ogerpon EX? I do think we see that Forest Sealstone, but is there a Shaman V?
There isn't one right now. The Iron Bundle hitting the discard pile as well is actually pretty bad for Ross. I think one game plan you could have here is perhaps use the bundle, try to energy switch enough energy to this, and probably hit like 180 here, and then snipe that eventually with Dusclops' ability. So discarding the Duskull and discarding the Iron Bundle is bad news for Ross Cawthon here.
Definitely not ideal. Forest Sealstone hitting the discard pile off this research, as well as one of the 2 Shaman V-Star that Ross is playing. 7 cards to draw. Looks like the other Teal Mask Ogerpon was able to be found. At least 1 energy switch. Bug Catching Set, kind of an interesting card to see being played here.
Yeah, sort of more powerful Great Ball, more powerful Energy Lodo, very specific for Grass-type Pokemon, which coincidentally are all in Ross's deck. So I think now he'll be able to piece something out, but the big piece missing is a Night Stretcher potentially to get back both the Duskull and that Iron Bundle to do something significant this turn.
And Ross is playing 3 Night Stretcher. We talked about it a little bit on Miloslav's turn, the power that card can offer, and it's really strong in this deck as well. It seems like you want to have energy in your hand after they go to the discard pile so you can continue to draw with the Teal Mask Ogre Pawn EX. You also can get back Duskull if a situation ever came up you wanted another Dusknoir. If you mill a Dusknoir or a Dusclops off of the Pokestop, you can retrieve it in that way. Really cool use of some of the new cards here from Ross Cawthon.
Now, I gotta wonder if Miloslav is pulling like a poker face right now, trying not to read the Shaman V. I'm not exactly sure how many players actually know exactly what the card does, but it's Revenge Blast attack. Maybe he knows, right?
Ross played the bug catching set and got no hits.
Nothing, dang.
Such a good card for these grass type decks. He does have quite a few of his grass Pokemon and has seen a few energy cards already, so maybe it wasn't the highest odds to get a hit, but 7 cards, you feel like you would hit at least a grass Pokemon or 1 energy, at least something.
Something would have been great here for Ross, especially the grass, as you mentioned, Chip. Could have maybe pieced out an attack, but I think his deck is running a little bit out of gas at this point, and it's going to be tough to do anything significant.
Will be the pass, and right over to Miloslav, who instantly will evolve into the Regidrago V-Star and plays Professor's Research, discarding both copies of the Dragapult EX. I don't think you could write it up much better. All Miloslav needing to pull off an attack this turn is a Grass Energy card, which doesn't have immediately in hand, but he's got plenty of ways to find it.
Yeah, Earthen Vessel going to be pretty key. Also has potentially Legacy Star, but I think the timing of the Legacy Star use is very key to this deck's success.
It looks like it will be that Earthen Vessel being played, debating what card to discard here. We'll get rid of one of the Teal Mask Ogre Pawn. Miloslav is just playing 3 copies of the card. That seems like, oh no, sorry, he is actually playing 4 copies.
Yeah.
A lot of people have gone down to 3 to try to make space for all these new unique cards from the most recent expansion, but Miloslav sticking with the 4. It is just one of the best, most important pieces of the engine of this deck. Does find a Fire Energy and a Grass Energy card. There is already another Teal Mask Ogre Pawn in the hand. We'll see how he approaches things here. Now, he's got an interesting choice here, Pablo, because he could use Teal Dance to draw a card, and he has Energy Switch in hand, so he could guarantee it. But he also could just attach to the Regidrago V-Star. Is there any reason to do one over the other?
I mean, it all comes down to resource conservation, right? If you draw that extra card, how impactful will that extra card be? Do you really need anything else at this point? Or is the Energy Switch better left unused in order to be utilized later down the line to power up a secondary Regidrago V-Star? I think that's pretty important. Seems like Miloslav will choose to use that Energy Switch. Not sure if he has another Regidrago. He does. Okay, wow. So pretty good. Yeah, the energy attachment going to a Regidrago, the grass to the V-Star. Picture perfect start, honestly, for Miloslav. I don't think he could have asked for anything better than this. Perhaps a boss or a Prime Catcher right now to target down either Shaman or the energy powered up.
There's got a couple of options here for what attack to go with. There's that Hisuian Gudra V-Star sticking out to the side. There's also Dragapult EX, which is one of the best ways to get a bunch of damage into play, as the Pokestop does discard 3 non-item cards. What do you think here would be the best attacking option for Miloslav in this spot? I mean, he's probably still questioning a little bit what exactly Ross has going on in his deck.
Yep, I think if you want to be super careful, you might choose to use Hisuian Gudra V-Star's attack, but if you want to go in the offensive, as we see the Gudra choice, you could easily just, like, take down the the Iron Leaves EX with Giratina V-Star, but choosing the safer route, just really finding out what Ross is up to, and he can pick that off eventually with a Dragapult Phantom Dive.
200 damage being thrown on to that Iron Leaves EX. Just 20 HP remaining. Should be easy work for Miloslav to clean up in future turns with a Dragapult EX attack. Ross here really needs to find a way to make something happen this turn. It's going to be kicked off with the Pokestop. Does discard a Grass Energy, but able to find an Earthen Vessel and an Ultra Ball. That should unlock some potential here.
Should indeed. Now, there are not too many ways for Ross to recover Grass Energy other than those Night Stretchers, right? So those Night Stretchers really need to put in a lot of work, but you need the Duskull, you need the Dusknoir, you need the Grass Energy. So it could be a little tricky for him, perhaps, to piece a knockout on this Regidrago V-Star that is also reducing damage off of Gudra.
Ross is not only an extremely smart individual, but an extremely smart Pokemon player. So he's going to be very measured with any actions he takes here, and he's definitely going to be forming a game plan of how he wants to piece together the end of this game. Looks like Earthen Vessel was played, able to grab 2 Grass Energy from the deck. Scanning through there, not too many resources it seems like left for Ross. That Dust Skull hitting the discard pile is kind of a bummer earlier on. He can get it back with the Night Stretcher, but he's going to need to find one.
He's going to need to find a little bit more at this point in time. Like, ideally, you want to go 2-2-2 for either player, right? That Iron Leaves is almost sentenced at this point because of Phantom Dive. So Ross really needs to perhaps try to target down the bench Regidrago, or maybe pacing off energies to deal significant damage to the V-Star in the active. The 210 HP is an awkward number for Regidrago, right? Like,
true.
The powerful attacks deal 200 damage, Phantom Dive and Rolling Iron, and sometimes Lost Impact is a little too costly.
Yeah, there's an opportunity for Miloslav to potentially set up a 6-prize turn, even, you know, if Ross does attack with the Teal Mask Ogerpon here. For one, he's not going to be doing that much damage, right? You can't get over the 80 damage reduction of the Rolling Iron super efficiently. But for Ross, I mean, it feels like he does need to throw some damage into play, most likely, right? He can't wait around and do nothing forever.
Yeah, and there, oh, no, I thought he was going to pick up to read the Shaman, but not quite.
And it looks like Ross is trying to cash in on this Iron Leaves EX in the active spot. Doesn't want to just retreat in order to allow Miloslav to pick it off on the bench. And he also has the boss's orders paired with this in order to take 2 prize cards. So Ross is able to strike first here, going up. 4 prizes remaining to 6.
Powerful Prism Edge onto that Squawkabilly X to get ahead in the prize cards and avoiding a potential Phantom Dive unless Miloslav gets a boss's orders or a prime catcher. So trying to ask as much as he can of his opponent, and then Shaman V-Star being now relatively threatening, right? We do have that Revenge Blast. If Miloslav ended up piecing out a 4-prize turn, then that would make it a really big threat.
Miloslav has not used Legacy Star just yet, so he's got plenty of options here. Just a few cards in hand, thinking through exactly what he wants to go for, checking the discard pile to make sure he knows what resources he will have the option to retrieve. Prime Catcher play could be pretty strong, and it does look like he actually even has the Professor's Research in the hand. Perhaps wanting to find boss's orders this turn, he will choose to discard that Professor's Research with an Ultra Ball, and it will be Mew EX grabbed. Miloslav's deck is already looking extremely thin. A lot of strong cards still remaining.
That restart ability will help him get to some of those very powerful cards. I think Miloslav choosing to just have a Mew on the bench and no Fizz and DPTX being played, so that's his only way to recover from potential Iono eventually happening, which restart is good, but I'm not sure it's as good as Fizz and DPTX, and that could be something that Ross is planning. Just try to make Miloslav with a crucial energy, a crucial something at some point to pull more ahead in this game.
Miloslav even counting the number of cards remaining in deck, and it looks like we will see that Legacy Star utilized. Or no, Pokestop first, flipping those cards, and Prime Catcher was able to be found. Superior Energy Retrieval will bring back up to 4 energy cards from the discard pile to the hand. At least 1 Grass Energy being discarded earlier. Looks like another as well. Still both Ogerpons having been used. Having not been used. This situation is looking extremely good for Miloslav. He's going to jump ahead here for 2 prizes on this Squawkabilly. Could even take the 4-prize turn if he wants it.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. Phantom Dive, knock out the Squawk, 2 damage counters on the Iron Leaves, and then 4 damage counters remaining. Gonna go 1, 1, and 2, I believe, on the Ogerpon, setting them up perfectly for a knockout, which will allow Miloslav to go down to 2 prizes remaining, and both Regidrago V-Stars almost threatening the Lost Impact for game on anything that Ross Cawthon has at this point.
Yeah, this situation is looking pretty tough for Ross to come back from. I think we see the potential of his deck. It doesn't look like he's going to quite be able to piece it together here in this game, and it seems like he agrees. Ross making a smart concession here. Wants to make sure he has plenty of time for hopefully a Game 2 and Game 3. Miloslav getting the win in Game 1.
Yeah, very smart concession right there for Ross. Very decisive win for Miloslav here. His deck worked perfectly to the T, did not miss a beat, didn't even have to use the Legacy V-Star. And like, when your opponent is down to 2 prize cards, they have 2 Regidragos set up, they have Legacy V-Star to just get back 1 Grass to threaten Lost Impact. Things could not have gone better for him in this first game.
Yeah, shuffling up here for game number 2, I guess as we recap here game 1. what do you think you'd like to see adjusted on Ross's side? You know, how does he approach this matchup? This is surely something he has tested a ton of, Regidrago V-Star being the most popular deck in the format.
I think the only adjustment he can generally make is just draw a little better, right? Not start your Iron Leaves so that you don't have to dedicate too many resources to the energy switch. Perhaps go first so you can actually have a slightly stronger setup to threaten and get that first 2-price knockout before your opponent can attack you, and hopefully establish the Iron Bundle, usage, and the Duskull as well.
Recapping game number 1, it was Ross able to strike first, taking the first 2 prize cards on the Squawkabilly EX, but it would be all for naught as Miloslav had the excellent response next turn with the Prime Catcher, taking a 4-prize turn, knocking out Ross's own Squawkabilly and the Iron Leaves on the bench that was hit earlier on in the game. Yeah, it's pretty interesting here to see how this is going to piece together. Both players using that powerful Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. Miloslav in a more conventional way with Regidrago, and Ross has really gone out of his way to find something unique. Here we go, game number 2 underway, and Ross has chosen to go first.
I feel like from Twilight Masquerade set and when the hype was surrounding that chip, I think you'll agree that all the focus was on Dragapult EX, but turns out Teal Mask Ogerpon EX was the real star of that.
Yeah, and it's even true for Raging Bolt as well, another deck that has popped up and become extremely strong after the release of Teal Mask Ogerpon. I mean, it turns out attaching extra energy for turn and drawing extra cards makes for a pretty good combination. Now, Ross is kicking things off with the Nest Ball, has started the Squawkabilly EX, which is not too bad, honestly. You want to get it in play generally, use that Squawk and Seize on turn 1. He will want to get it out of the active spot eventually, but he knows that Miloslav cannot be aggressive and do something like a Raging Bolt player could do, take 2 prizes on turn 1.
Yeah, at best you could attack for 130 with Regidrago V, but nothing too impactful. Now, we did see Ross's prizes on screen. 1 Shaman V-Star being prized, the Palpat being prized as well, could mess with any potential Thornton plays that he wanted to make. And over on Miloslav's side, he does have the Squawkabilly EX prize, so that could lead to a slower start depending on what he has in his hand. Can't really tell if he has a support or not, but usually with 4 Nest Ball, for Ultra Ball, Squawk is super good, but if you don't have access to that, it can cause your deck to have like a little bit of a hiccup, if you will.
This is kind of awkward here for Ross as well. He's got the option to use Squawk and Seize, but he's got 2 supporters in his hand and also 2 of his 3 Night Stretchers, so we're going to see he's choosing to actually hold off on that hand, not discarding those precious resources. What do you think of that, Pablo?
I think the Night Stretchers are so key in order to potentially use Dusknoir and Dusclops multiple times, perhaps even the Iron Bundle, right? You just take down Pokemon on the bench, you never worry about a Regidrago V-Star, so I think Ross really valuing that, and this also is information that Miloslav gains indirectly, right? You have a Squawk, and you're on turn 1, and you're choosing not to use it, that means your hand is super good.
Miloslav here has a pretty good hand. Speaking of, we were a little worried about the potential of the prized Squawkabilly on his end. He's not going to need it. He's got research.
Yep.
He's got the fire energy through the Earthen Vessel. He's got the discard of the Dragapult, and he's already got Regidrago V. This is looking pretty strong. Now, it maybe is a little awkward to see both 2 copies of Earthen Vessel this early. It's a pretty nice resource to have on the other end of a research, so you can discard your Dragon-type Pokemon to copy with the Apex Dragon attack, so that you can find your energy cards in order to Teal Dance into play, but overall, an extremely strong start already for Miloslav.
I would agree, Chip. Incredibly strong, and is it going to be another picture-perfect situation for him? Even energies in the discard pile are not a bad idea because you have Superior Energy Retrieval, you have the Night Stretcher that you talked about earlier, so you get to thin the deck as well. You already have your main attacker in the discard pile. Things are looking very good for Miloslav here.
Yeah, has an option here off this Ultra Ball to either grab another Regidrago V, another Teal Mask Ogerpon EX, or just another Dragon Pokemon to put into the discard pile. Something like the Hisuian Goodra V-Star could be an option, and it looks like Regidrago V will be the choice. Pretty sure I did see another one in hand, so he wants to really prioritize getting 2 of those in play.
Yeah, I think Miloslav at this point has enough information to make the educated guess or the calculated guess that his V-Star is probably a little bit more powerful than Ross Cawthon's V-Star in the early game, and he just wants to play it super safe, right? Just get 2 down. If 1 goes down, well, I have the backup of the other one to go ahead. He'll probably dedicate 2 energies and like the energy attachment, the energy switch to the main Regidrago, but it never hurts to have the backup immediately off the bat. And yeah, this is the debate he's having. Does he go all in on one? Does he spread the resources? How does he go about this?
Yeah, and the risk of putting too many energy on one is that the Teal Mask Ogerpon EX on Ross's side could potentially reach for a knockout with that Myriad Leaf Shower. And so we see Miloslav being extremely conservative, extremely careful here, choosing to use that energy switch to move the energy over to the other Regidrago V. Off of the Professor's research, has a fresh hand of 7 here. Doesn't seem as excited about this hand as he did the previous one.
He has a research, he has a V-Star, missing energies perhaps, or energy switches, but he also has access to Legacy Star if he really needs to. Of course, all Regidrago V-Star players try to set up without using their V-Star, that's the dream, but sometimes you have to do it, then you might as well do it.
Ross using his Ogerpon's Teal Dance to throw an energy into play, and it will be the Iono utilized. He did have the Iron Bundle in hand, choosing not to put it into play. Like you mentioned earlier, you know, he really only wants to have one prize Pokemon available to his opponent to KO at any time. So even though Iron Bundle can sit on the bench for a while, be utilized later in the game potentially, he doesn't want to give his opponent that option to take that odd prize. It would lock him out of using his Duskull.
Perfect analysis, Chip. That is exactly why we did not see that Iron Bundle hit the bench. It seems like it would be counterintuitive perhaps to go after that instead of the 2 prize attackers. However, if Miloslav now has information of the Dusknoir, he knows that's how Ross Cawthon can really push his damage output to do even more damage. Now, I don't think 210 is reachable for him at this point, but this is where the Iron Leaves could come into play for Ross if he has a way to find it.
He still has an energy to attach for turn. Could just get some damage in play with the Myriad Leaf Shower, setting up for a Dusknoir, Dusclops KO potentially in the future, and it looks like that's what he's going to value here, just getting that damage into play. 120 placed onto the Teal Mask Ogerpon EX.
Not the most impactful damage overall, but that's because Miloslav Ogerpon doesn't have any energy attached to it. Myriad Leaf Shower does do more damage for energy attached to both Pokemon, not just itself.
We see Miloslav using that active Teal Dance, drawing a card. He's got an energy switch in hand, using Teal Dance once more with the benched Ogerpon and a second Regidrago V-Star. Wow, what a setup here. Now, Miloslav did have the hand Iono to the bottom, so he didn't actually have access to Regidrago V-Star anymore, so a very nice thing to see him draw. We know there's some pretty powerful resources on the bottom of the deck, so possibly this is a game where Miloslav is going to have to use that Legacy Star a little earlier. We didn't see him use it at all in game number 1. He was able to save it and would have had the option to use it if Ross disrupted his hand. So Miloslav might have to go aggressive with it here to pull off the attack. Let's see what he pieces together.
I think he might have just enough to... Oh, no, he's missing a grass energy. You're right. Yeah.
Well, remember, one of the Regidrago on the bench has the grass energy.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
He actually has just enough to get by without using the V-Star. He might still do it anyways if he's trying to plan something different. Now, I do want to highlight how, at this point, Miloslav doesn't have Halucha's flying entry ability, which would be perfect if you do 200 damage to the Ogerpon. What did you see, Chip?
Yeah, he actually chose to evolve the Regidrago that has the fire energy on it. If he had evolved the other one, he's got fire energy in hand.
Yeah.
With the energy switch, that would have set him up to be able to attack. Now he's in a situation where he's going to need to draw a grass energy, which he does not have yet.
And I think this pause he just had might have been, unless he's dedicating the energy to the Ogerpon and going to use Ogerpon to deal with Ogerpon, that's a way to save your V-Star, right? Make sure you get the guaranteed knockout. Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're seeing. We see the grass transferred to the Ogerpon, and it's Ogerpon versus Ogerpon.
Yeah, bring me back to 2012 with the Mewtwo battles back in the day, right? And seeing 2 of the best Pokemon EX, the basic Pokemon EX in the format, just laying into each other. It will be Miloslav now in this game taking the first KO, as the Myriad Leaf Shower will be dealing more than enough to take out Ross's own Teal Mask Ogerpon EX.
Up to 140 damage total, I do believe. And Miloslav did hit an Iono off of Mew EX's restart. This time it's Miloslav who gets the first 2 prizes, leaving Ross Cawthon's board very bare bones. No energy in play, no real threat, and really needing to have an extra Ogerpon to get the return KO, right? But it's going to come down to perhaps setting up the Dusknoir to pick off this Ogre Pawn eventually to turn things around. So Ross is behind, but he has all the tools necessary to potentially pull ahead still.
Yeah, and I think it was a really smart play from Miloslav last turn. Could have gone in with the Regidrago, but didn't have a great way to get the knockout, right? I don't even think that the Giratina EX, V-Star is in the discard pile. So you could have hit for 200, you know, set up some damage on the bench, get a little more damage in play. But this is Miloslav attacking Ross's board in the sense of taking all those energy out of play, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
Ross
sometimes if your opponent has enough things on the board, you focus on establishing a powerful position. But here, eliminating 3 energies, Ross's only attacker, even the double Teal Dance ability to potentially power up a backup attacker, all of that influences Miloslav's decision, as you mentioned, Chip.
Now Ross was able to find a Nest Ball, which can grab the Shaman V. And he does have that Forest Sealstone in the hand, I believe also a Professor's Research. So he's going to have quite a few cards to work with here. But he needs a lot to respond to this Teal Mask Ogre Pawn. I mean, he's going to have to set up yet another Teal Mask Ogre Pawn if he wants to take 2 prizes this turn.
Now, Revenge Blast at this point in time doesn't do enough damage. Miloslav has taken 2 prizes, so Revenge Blast will deal 140. Not quite enough, but the Forest Sealstone seems like a pretty key card here. Ross is holding a Counter Catcher in his hand, so he might choose to go after something else, perhaps the Mew. That opens up a potential Iron Leaves EX knockout, and then you use the Dust Noir to pick off the Ogre Pawn, and then you only need to take the last 2 prizes with a powerful Shaman V-Star attack. This research is going to be a big one, Chip.
And he is able to find that Iron Leaves, has a Grass Energy, but does need a little bit of help. I think we're going to be relying on what is drawn here from the Teal Dance and potentially the Pokestop. Another energy switch, not helpful at this point. May come down to the Pokestop here. Can Ross find an Earthen Vessel? I think that is the card he needs to hit. We know he's got the V-Star power left, so we can see it guaranteed through the Star Alchemy. And this was a pretty smart counter catcher, I think, from Ross. Obviously, he would have liked to have taken out Miloslav's energy in play, kind of similar to what Miloslav did to him on the last turn, but he recognizes that's going to be a little difficult to achieve. I'd need so many energy switch. So we do see energy switch and bug catching set found on the Pokestop. By bringing up the Mew EX, like you mentioned, that Iron Leaves is now an option.
Only 1 energy hit from the bug catching set. Not the most impactful. It gives him a little bit more wiggle room, but still needs to find another Ogre Pawn and another energy to have the potential for Iron Leaves. And Forest Sealstone can get you 1, but it can't get you both. So perhaps you have to dedicate it to a Nest Ball to establish Fezandipity X to get 3 cards. The issue is Ross needs 2 cards, and he can only guarantee 1 right now.
And we see the wheels are turning here. Ross thinking through the odds. What is the best play? And it may come down to that Fezandipity. Looks like it will be that V-Star power utilized. Let's see if that brand new Pokemon EX from Shrouded Fable is the grab. Secret Box is in the deck as well.
Yeah, Secret Box is an option, right? It's an ace pick that we don't commonly see, but would that guarantee it?
Not quite, not to this point. Thinking through the options here, it may just come down to the Fezandipity, which feels tough because you need 2 of the 3 cards drawn off Flip the Script to be a very specific cards. You need an out to the Ogre Pawn, and you need an energy card.
I think Ross chose an Teal Mask Ogre Pawn EX, so he's gonna risk it on the 1. He's choosing 1 of the cards he needs, right? And now he needs the Teal Dance to find Night Stretcher, an Earthen Vessel, an actual Grass Energy, the Fezandipity, the Nest Ball. So
a lot of outs here.
A lot of options here for Ross.
Yeah, this is going to be a massive draw. This is going to determine if Ross can pull off a KO this turn. Teal Dance for 1, and the find is the Dusknoir, I believe.
Yep, Dusknoir drawn. Nothing else to do in terms of drawing cards. Shaman doesn't do enough damage. He can't even retreat into it. Like, realistically, does bench the Duskull, which could potentially help, but missing the attack here is huge.
Yeah, I think Ross very much would have been in this game if he had pulled off the attack this turn for 2 prizes. Not being able to do that here is going to make things pretty difficult, I think. But if there's anyone who can find a way back into the game, it's definitely Ross. But Miloslav on his end is going to do everything he can to eliminate those options. You know, make sure whenever you're ahead in a game, a very common thing you see from these players is they just ask themselves, okay, how do I lose this game? And make sure that they always play as safely as possible.
And one way you could do it is if you go overly aggressive with your V-Star, you go overly aggressive with your resources, and that's exactly what we saw from Miloslav last turn, right? He dedicated resources to a 1-KO, but he has a backup Regidrago V-Star with a low amount of energy, so it's not threatened by a Teal Mask, and has access to a V-Star to just accommodate to any situation that presents itself. And the fact that the knockout was missed by Ross gives Miloslav a huge advantage here.
Now, Miloslav would have to use Boss's Orders or Prime Catcher to take 2 prizes this turn, either on the Shaman V or the Squawk ability, as we do see 3 cards hit from the Pokestop, immediately using Earthen Vessel to discard the Nest Ball, finding energy cards. So he does need to piece some things together, but with Legacy Star and with now all these energies being found, he's going to have plenty of options, I think.
Not many grass energy left, as we just saw. So that could be something that, I feel like that pause that Miloslav did, put 1 grass, then pause, then chose the fire, that gives perhaps your opponent a little bit of information and, oh, okay, maybe they don't have all the grass energies, but does have energy switch, has enough energy in play to work. He could generally just have a lost impact knockout, and he's just going to target down the Shaman V here.
It will be the Boss's Orders bringing Shaman V to the active spot, and its Revenge Blast attack is potentially extremely strong, but didn't have enough time to stick in play for a turn to evolve into Shaman V-Star. Shaman V-Star has a little bit beefier, 250 HP. It gets to hang around. Not the case here, as Apex Dragon able to copy the Rolling Iron, taking 2 prizes, getting rid of Ross's Shaman V. And this is a really tough situation Ross finds himself in. Got the Dusk Skull. We know Dusk Nor is in hand. If he has maybe the rare candy, perhaps he can piece something together here, but it is certainly going to be an uphill battle from this point.
Yeah, rare candy Dusk Nor could take down this, and then enough energy somewhere, but it's gonna be very difficult to piece something here for Ross. Doesn't have a lot of just things in play.
Ross does have another counter catcher available, so I'm trying to think maybe he can piece together an Iono play, something like that, but no, actually even looks like the counter catcher is prized, and Ross recognizes, I can't win from this position, extends the fist, and it will be Miloslav getting the win here in round 2 at the World Championships.
I don't think we saw Ross's match really, or Ross's deck rather, really work to its full potential. Ross is a good friend of mine. I helped him practice a little bit for this World Championship. His deck definitely can pull things through a lot better, but yeah, this is tough, right? Regidrago just has a lot of HP, has a lot of versatility in its attack, and that's why it's the most popular and arguably the best deck in the format today.
And I think both of those games from Miloslav are a perfect example as to why this deck is so popular. It has so many options, and it is pretty consistent as well. And Regidrago V-Star has so much HP, it's pretty wild, you know, how much this deck got thrown onto the map after a top 16 finish at the North American International Championships. You know, before NAIC had popped up a little bit in some online events, but it didn't seem like anyone really took it that seriously. But there were a couple of players who brought it to NAIC, had strong finishes, and you can see just how the meta has kind of formed around these new pieces working together. Regidrago is one of those cards that has always been really interesting